Now, I'm pleased to introduce the president and founder of the White Mountain Education Association, Joleen DuBois. Joleen will open our conference with Introduction to Psychic Energy.
Thinking this morning on the way over here about Helena and Nicholas Rourke, over 100 years ago, they gave us these teachings. And now, when I think of the distribution of these teachings all over the world, when they initially started in just one small part of one country, and when the transmissions were given to Nicholas and Helena, there was just a small group of people that were receiving this incredible information that's become a worldwide teaching. So I think for most of us here today and online and locally here, it is a real gift. A gift that has changed our lives in so many ways and given us life direction and has given us answers to questions about life's difficulties and life's joys and even the purpose of life. We are so, and I am so grateful to have found these teachings. And not only that, it is the work that the original members of the original group, the work that they put into making sure that these teachings were going to be available to us. And I wonder if they even had a sense of 100 years from then of how many people around the world would be influenced so strongly by this light and the power and this energy. So one of the key themes in the teaching of Agni Yoga is psychic energy. And yet, even though it's a key theme, it's not really clearly understood. So we picked this as a theme this year, and I think by the end of these 3 days, you're going to say, wow, that's really great. So let me begin. Helena Rourke, in a letter to her students about psychic energy, said psychic energy is called primary energy. Psychic energy is called primary energy. And therefore, she said, it includes all other energies, which are only its differentiations. Some of these differentiations, I've created a list so you can put it in your notes, but this is just a small, it's like the tip of the iceberg of all the energies that are streaming from this primary energy. So materia lucida is one of the differentiations of this primary energy called psychic energy. We are told that those individuals whose centers are open can actually see the fire of materia lucida. And then we have materia matrix. Materia matrix is beyond the astral plane. Fohat, F-O-H-A-T, Fohat is understood as universal fire. And then there's Kundalini. Oh, wait a minute, there's Parafohat. We don't want to leave that one out. Parafohat. Parafohat is psychic energy in its higher or highest cosmic aspect. And then Kundalini. Kundalini manifests through the heart in highly evolved spirits. So all of this is from the teaching, and part of some of these, like materia lucida particularly, is part of the differentiations of this primary energy. Now, Daniel Anton, who was the executive director of the Agni Yoga Society and the Nicholas Rourke Museum, and a man that I know many of you that are online today and here knew him, met him, spent time with him, loved him. Well, he was the man, he was the person who succeeded Sina Fosdick, who became actually, Sina Fosdick was the original and the first executive director of the museum and the Agni Yoga Society, and she was appointed to that position by the master. So Daniel Etten said about Zena, he said that Zena Fosdick was the main engine in launching the Agni Yoga books into life. He said she was one of the first Agni Yoga students appointed by the master himself to be the guardian of the teaching and the institutions in order to develop and to promote the teaching. So we've published a book called Meetings with the Masters by Sina Fosdick, who, this is a huge book. It's about 800 pages long. It's her diary, and it contains a lot of information about her relationship with the mother of Agni Yoga, Helena Rourke, Nicholas Rourke, the master. So all those experiences, personal experiences she had, are now published in that book. So this will give you a good background to the history of the origins of Agni Yoga and the Rourkes. In the book, My Teachers, Meetings with the Rourkes by Sina, she writes, after breakfast, we worked on translations with EI. Now, EI is Helena Rourke. We worked on translations with EI, who explained the difference between fire and psychic energy. She told us that fire is a fundamental substance, a pure element from which everything is created. She said the psychic energy is a fire that is a compound mixed and colored by other substances. Only by the will do we direct psychic energy. That is why she said the will is so important. By developing our centers, we develop psychic energy. But the centers can only be developed by our spirit. Our spirit is called psychic energy. But that is not exactly correct, she said. She said it would be better to call fire the spirit. So spirit is fire, and it is a fire that creates. Fires are found on 49 main levels with their subdivisions. We have material fires and spiritual fire, and the spiritual fire is a living fire. Between these two fires, we have many streams of fires coming from spirit to matter and going from matter to spirit. So Agni Yoga teaching explains that there are 7 main centers and that they correspond to the 7 principles of man. But for the complete crowning, a disciple must kindle all 49 fires, which includes the fires, all the fires of the center and their branches. So you can see already, and I know many of you know this, but this is so different from any other kind of yoga, and certainly different than Hatha yoga. Closer in understanding Agni Yoga is to Raja, yoga. Raja Yoga is one of the main yogas that preceded Agni Yoga. So, there are 21 centers mentioned in the teaching because their opening involves the opening of the rest of the centers and their branches. All spiritual centers depend on the heart. The heart is the great accumulator and transmuter of all the energies. So despite the fact that we tend to approach the teachings of Agni Yoga intellectually, we will develop our consciousness to a point where now the teachings are understood in the heart and not just simply a mental exercise. So the heart is the great accumulator and transmuter of psychic energy and all those differentiations of this primary energy. So the heart may be called the sun of the organism because of the role it plays. The sun of the organism. Now the head center. The head center is also called the bell center at the crown. And it is a grayish yellow mass that looks like a small amber ball. A little tidbit piece of information that I found: at cremations in Mongolia, the lamas always look for that ball, for that bell center. The larger it is, the higher of the spirit of the deceased, and it does not burn. These centers are nourished by the spirit, and the rest are nourished by the blood, and so are the physical centers nourished by the blood. The centers can be opened only in the cases where our consciousness is broadened. So the teaching educates us, gives us disciplines, gives us this contact with higher and higher energies through inspiration, through aspiration, which then broadens our consciousness. So we can't just sit, in a yogic pose and broaden our consciousness. It's going to take some work, and that work is striving and studying. But the opening of the centers is not the final achievement. Interesting. So the broadening of consciousness is not the final achievement. Afterwards, after our consciousness is broadened, after our centers are open, that's when fiery transmutation takes place. And it's at this point, the point of transmutation, that many people go on to other teaching. And why, you ask? Read a book called On the Threshold of the New World. In there, these are letters of Joleen Rourke where she talks about her fiery experiences and her sacred pains. And she was the way shower to us of what it means to undergo fiery transmutation. The teaching says it is made easier for people who have labored to fill their chalice. Therefore, do not expect open centers in every kind of psychic manifestation. There should be a slight opening. There must be at least a slight opening of one of the centers. And there are such endless gradations of these partially open centers. So in other words, this is just a 30-minute introduction, so I have to contain myself in sharing, what I'd like to share. But you're going to hear it through the next 3 days, and everybody will be sharing, and so I won't take up the time and go into another hour. But anyway, learning about the centers, I know one of the speakers is going to be talking briefly about the centers, but the point is that the opening of the centers takes place in a gradual way, and this gradual way brings in gradations of these levels and dimensions and power of psychic energy. So we only want these centers to open up gradually, slowly, so the rest of our body and glands and organs and cells can have time to adjust and adapt. So psychic energy is a fundamental substance of the universe and of every living being. We should learn to recognize it and learn to send it, radiating it as the sendings of the Spirit. But we should also learn to consciously feel the psychic energy within ourselves. And you can do this, not all the time, because psychic energy is not always functioning within us. But we accumulate psychic energy. And through that accumulation comes a moment where we need it. And we use it creatively. So I was thinking back when I was, a little bit younger, and my professional life was music and playing the violin in various symphonies. And I can remember sitting in the middle of a professional, beautiful, highly mastered musicians playing, the composers, great composers, like Samuel Barber and Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky and others. And I remember sitting in the middle of all these accomplished musicians and feeling this energy that was transformational. And of course, back then I didn't know it was called psychic energy, but it was so uplifting that it took hours after the performance of that particular symphony experience, hours afterwards, that I couldn't sleep. I was so excited I couldn't do anything. And that was because of that uplifting, powerful psychic energy. So we do feel psychic energy within ourselves. The spirit going through a series of incarnations should explode the seed of the spirit and saturate it with emanations. In this way, our lower and higher consciousness will unite. And our spirit in subsequent lives will remember the past. But the personality, our individual personality, is going to be destroyed. However, those people who act only through the lower consciousness have no memory of previous incarnations. So let's return to what Helena Rourke told her students. Psychic energy is called primary energy. Therefore, it includes all other energies which are only its differentiations. A good question to ask is, what is the originating source of psychic energy? Well, the teaching gives us the answer, saying that the originating source is the cosmic magnet. The cosmic magnet releases its energy through the greater zodiac. The greater zodiac, which is made of the Great Bear, the Pleiades, and Sirius. The cosmic magnet is the core of creation, which radiates all energies into space. So it is from the cosmic magnet that all creation is projected out and kept in space. The cosmic magnet operates on all planes. Our physical bodies, our spatial bodies, Our emotions and our thoughts are all subject to the power of the cosmic magnet. This means that psychic energy has 7 grades. All psychic energy, all is psychic energy, but as we receive these higher grades of energy, we come in contact with a more powerful energy. So, psychic energy received by our highest center can create a different result than the energy received by our solar plexus or sacral center, although essentially it is the same energy. So the accumulation of psychic energy is possible. The accumulation of psychic energy is possible through what? Conscious effort. So throughout the books, you're going to come across this word striving. In fact, we have a compilation just on that word striving that's about that thick. Striving, conscious effort. So for example, in certain seasons we have lots of fruits, but if we do not collect the fruits and store them, we will not have fruit until the trees bear fruit again. In the same way, when psychic energy is abundant, we can collect it and accumulate it within our centers and then use it as needed during the process of withdrawal. Psychic energy is accumulated in our sun, our physical sun. The sun is a reservoir of psychic energy that sustains the lives existing in the sphere of our solar system. Our planet is an accumulator of psychic energy through its kingdoms, and especially through its head center, heart center, and throat centers. Now, these 3 centers of the planet correspond to Shambhala, also known as the Father's home, hierarchy, and humanity. Humanity, which is sometimes called the traveler on the road toward perfection. Helena Rourke told Zena that by developing our centers, we develop psychic energy. But the centers can only be developed by the Spirit. Besides the 3 centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, and the centers I mentioned earlier, there are centers in space formed by angelic forces that accumulate psychic energy from space, and then they transmit it to lower kingdoms as is required. Now, human beings can individually accumulate psychic energy through their head, heart, and throat centers, and also through their guardian angel. Certain trees, such as pine and deodar and eucalyptus and oak trees, accumulate great amounts of psychic energy. Almost all flowers are little accumulators of psychic energy, especially roses and freesias, and interestingly enough, chrysanthemums. Chrysanthemum is not necessarily a flower that we rush out to put, in our living room, but roses and freesias as well. Pine needles radiate great amounts of psychic energy and purify space. So summarizing what I've just shared, we can say that psychic energy is distributed by the cosmic magnet throughout space, through the suns or great beings who are called Logoi, Shambhala, the hierarchy, mountains, rivers, oceans, lakes, trees, flowers, and precious stones, such as the diamond and ruby and topaz. The human heart center is the distribution point of psychic energy, the human heart center. into our threefold mechanisms, into our physical, emotional, and mental mechanisms. Interestingly enough, when the heart and thought cooperate in creative work, they can charge an object with immense amounts of psychic energy. Certain books, such as the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Gospel of Buddha, the New Testament, are heavily charged with psychic energy. Books written by Blavatsky and Helena Rourke and Alice Bailey are loaded with psychic energy. The paintings of artists such as Nicholas Rourke, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, as well as the music of great composers, are great sources of psychic energy. Psychic energy can be drawn into our system only in certain conditions. For example, when you have an expanded or broadened consciousness and creative thinking, when you are pure and innocent, and when you are in joy and ecstasy and aspiration, this is when psychic energy will be drawn into your beingness. In certain tribes in Africa, and in some Indian tribes in North America, certain rituals and ceremonies are used to create a magnetic atmosphere to draw psychic energy during sickness and war and important events. Psychic energy is also accumulated in physicians, political leaders, artists, and those who are dedicated to spreading the ageless wisdom. If they, there's an if here, if they are truly dedicated to healing, leadership, and creative uplifting service for humanity. A dedicated physician or a dedicated psychologist has a great amount of psychic energy. On the other hand, if their whole intention is to make money or to exploit people, their psychic energy evaporates just like the morning mist. So mountains and rivers and lakes and oceans, and I'm really going to rush through this. I know. It's very hard to stay with my notes. So mountains and rivers and lakes and oceans, if they are not contaminated by pollution, has psychic energy. They are charged with psychic energy through great devas. Psychic energy is found in waterfalls. The friction generates an electrical and magnetic atmosphere which accumulates psychic energy. Those who commune with nature feel charged with psychic energy. It's like people who come to our conference from out of state. The first thing they do is put on their boots and go out into the forest to hike. Right? So they are regenerating themselves with the psychic energy found in the forest, and it uplifts their souls. But the teaching does give us a warning, and it says when psychic energy is released and not used, it creates universal and group and personal problems, even destruction. Unused psychic energy becomes a means of destruction. Every time it is in flow, it balances the energy. So we want the psychic energy to flow to balance the primary energy. During this flow, this energy must be accumulated. Must be, just like when we engage in daily meditation, we are accumulating psychic energy. When we experience the three major solar festivals of Aries and Taurus and Gemini, we accumulate psychic energy during that time. That's why we set aside those days as special spiritual holidays. and the conference time as well. Psychic energy makes people highly creative, highly sacrificial, and makes people highly compassionate. It also sheds light on our path. A person is in tune with a higher station when psychic energy operates in them. Psychic energy puts the creative centers into operation. Even if you are not a professional artist, you can begin to sing and write and dance and discover new ways to bring out the beauty and wisdom that is found in your core. Creativity stops when psychic energy is disturbed by drugs and alcohol, moral abuses, crimes, and exploitations. Now, there is a decided difference between a letter written by a person full of psychic energy and a letter written by an average person. In the first case, each word and sentence is charged with psychic energy. And as the person reads the letter, the recipient reads the letter, they become deeply impressed. This is just like reading the books of Agni Yoga, the psychic energy, that's in every single word. It's just thrilling. Anyway, in the second case, in spite of good grammar and great language and wonderful ideas contained in the letter, because there's no psychic energy, the impression is superficial. And I am just out of time. Just give me a minute. Okay. Okay. So, psychic energy washes away all hindrances accumulated in the mechanism of creativity and makes it highly sensitive to the creative currents. Highly sacrificial people carry psychic energy in them. It's through psychic energy that you see that you belong to all, and that the world is more important than what you yourself are. And you're going to learn about this tomorrow. And Olivia Hansen is going to be sharing her own experiences, and talking about a group that is working together on a worldwide level, on an otherness level, bringing the Dalai Lama into her presentation that is very much focused on the whole. On the whole. True sacrifice produces deep joy and ecstasy. And in any sacrificial act, a person becomes their true self. Those who live for themselves have nothing to offer to humanity, and all that they give is but disturbance and pain and suffering and ego and vanity. So psychic energy cannot exist in the presence of ego and self-interest. When a person begins to work on selfish lines, what happens is the psychic energy that was there leaves them. So sacrifice has nothing to do with the ego. The ego holds a person back in isolation. And unless the ego vanishes, a sacrificial life cannot start. Sacrifice done for self-interest does not put psychic energy into operation, but only increases the person's karmic burden. The touch of psychic energy upon the great masses releases groups of highly equipped servers. I'm going to repeat this because it's so important to all of us here in the room, and also online, and those that will be listening to the YouTube recording later. The touch of psychic energy upon the great masses releases groups of highly equipped servers and outstanding leaders in all departments of human endeavors. It is through such leaders and groups that the psychic energy works and brings great revelations and transformation. So let me close with this. Psychic energy is one of the greatest powers in the world. The victorious ones in the future are going to be those who are charged with psychic energy. Thank you.